Welcome back to the Always Aggressive Podcast. Cory, Lipsett, head coach Tony Ersland coming to you from the Wrestling Pod here inside Mackey Arena. Guys, we are inching ever closer. We've got a lot of big stuff to talk about today for sure. It's been a few weeks, so we appreciate everybody checking back in with us. We got Wrestle-Offs 72 hours away. Less than that, probably.
Less than that,
like 40. It's Friday.
Don't make.
He's trying to do the math in your head there.
Never mind.
This is a no math zone. Okay, come on, man.
So, Wrestle-Offs right around the corner. We'll talk about that with at length here on the show today. We've also got some cool national recruiting type news that we'll touch on, and I've got a surprise question I'm going to throw at these boys at the end of the show. They don't know it, so you can see on Ted's face. He don't know.
Surprise questions.
First things first, though. We've known the schedule for a little bit, but some news recently in TV selections. The Boilermakers going to be live in the Big Ten Network again this year a couple of times. What's going on with that?
Tony, I'll tee it up for you here. The Boilermakers selected for a pair of TV matches this year. The first of which will be January 8th against Iowa. It's a Sunday afternoon duel. And the second one is on February 12th against Northwestern. And that will be part of a Purdue Northwestern doubleheader on the BTN with us in Northwestern at noon wrestling and men's basketball at Northwestern at 2 p.m. On the BTN. So those are our two TV picks to date. And Tony, if you want to dive into that a little more, you're welcome to.
No, I just think it's always great. We've talked off and on about our TV numbers and how strong they are, and we're just generally appreciative to BTN and the opportunity to be on and perform for a large audience, I guess, if you will. So just grateful, that we're going to have two more opportunities. Especially Iowa, big duel, starting off our Big Ten, season. And then even to close it out with Northwestern. And I know BTN always feels really well about when you pair those up, right? Like you got wrestling and then basketball, all Purdue does really well. So yeah, again, just really excited that we're going to be showcased again a couple times on BTN.
One thing that I think I would be remiss if we didn't bring up the fact that, while we have the two TV dates, my man Cory Palm over here works very, very hard and long hours to bring those other duels to us. We have a pretty nice home schedule this year, and people across the country will have the opportunity to watch all of them via streaming, even if they're not on television, due to Cory and his team's help. And Tony, that level of exposure and the way kind of wrestling is viewed nationally now in that format has changed so drastically over the last 5-6 years. And it's been huge for Purdue, and I think it's been huge for the sport.
No, there's no doubt, what BTN has done for wrestling and showcasing it the way it has been important, and we need to keep trending in the direction we're going. That would be the one thing I would say, right? The coach in me is always looking for progress, and so we want to keep trending. So you urge people to watch and to show up and continue to support their teams and just Big Ten wrestling in general, because, as those numbers increase, opportunities for the sport increase. That's how I look at it, right? Like we're a steward of the sport too, and it's healthier when we're doing better. And so again, you just encourage people to really enjoy the opportunities that Big Ten gives people to watch wrestling, because they do work hard at it, and we are appreciative of it.
Speaking of working hard at it, Cory, you've been good to us in the fact that you've made sure that all our stuff is streamed over the years, and you've really worked hard on learning the sport and getting closer to the sport and doing play-by-play and color commentary and some different stuff like that for us. I guess asking you, like, what are some of the biggest advantages and or kind of like challenges around streaming wrestling?
From a TV standpoint, from a production standpoint, it's very compelling. It's a very compelling sport, but it's also very it's fairly easy to produce. You know, there's a lot of action that happens close in, but it's not, you know, fast moving where your camera operators are constantly having to, you know, follow action up and down the soccer field or a basketball court. So you know, it's fast action close in, but it's not the same speed as like volleyball. So you know, from strictly a production standpoint, that's a big bonus for wrestling. Back in the early days, didn't think I was going to go here. Back in the early days of television, the number one sport in America was boxing because it was the easiest sport to televise. You could get, you know, just a couple cameras close in. It's compelling. You see the guys' faces, you know, they're pummeling each other. Well, wrestling has a lot of those same advantages. It's close in. You see guys pummeling each other. It's compelling. There's great storylines. So, you know, that's awesome. That's great to, from a production standpoint. It comes back to the competition level a lot of times. Like, everybody in the Big Ten is ranked in the top 25. Sometimes it feels like everybody's ranked in the top 10 somehow. You know, it's great match after great match after great match. And there's just so much fun stuff to be able to talk about on a broadcast. The guys and the coaches are characters, so they're fun to get to know and to get to relay some of that. It's just, there's all sorts of great things that go along with, you know, being involved in Big Ten wrestling. Being able to be involved in it on the streaming side, like I have been, and as they get more exposure, I'm looking at, I think 24 duels being televised by the network this year. You know, on the linear network, virtually every other match is available on stream on Big Ten Plus. So, you know, their commitment to the sport is great, and the sport is definitely worthwhile, I think.
Yep. The other drop in I will mention as a challenge, right? It's and we're lucky because we've got Cory who understands the sport and invests in the sport and, you know, loves it, is getting people to explain the storylines and what's going on to other people. You know what I mean? And I laugh because over the years we've had some situations, right, where, you know, we'll poke fun at kind of some of the announcing, and that's, again, just me being blessed. We've got people here and Cory at the front of it who do a good job of showcasing our guys. And I am appreciative of that because it's important that people can bring the stories and what the guys are doing and what the action is that's unfolding in front of you and why it's relevant is important. And I don't want to ignore that because that can be sometimes for us coaches, the hardest part is getting that to the casual fan who maybe just turned on the program and they're watching, and why should I watch this? You know, right. Those people are important, and I do feel lucky that we've got people, and Cory as the lead out front on the guy who does that for us.
Cory, I was just thinking about the fact that Tony was at Nebraska for the illegal fist to the back.
Yeah. And I knew exactly what was coming when you brought that up.
Yep.
There's no doubt.
Some things never die. Awesome. The internet is forever.
That is a learning lesson for us all.
For everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Avoid the illegal fist to the back.
Yes.
Good rule for life, really.
Yeah. Just rules to live by, people.
So we are looking at the calendar here and doing a little, you know, I know that we said this is a no math zone, but we are just over 2 weeks, 16 days into the official 2022-23 season as far as practice goes. Coach, give us some updates from the room, some guys who are standing out, some themes from workouts and where we're headed.
Yeah, I've been pretty happy as I have most of the fall. It's an easy, not easy, you know, nothing's ever easy, but it's a fun team to coach. You know, in general, they're coachable and they're working hard and there's a lot of talent there. You know, I've talked about our youth before. It's been for me about seeing consistency in the room daily. Like, you know, sometimes your young guys will show you something really good and you just want them to keep it in front of you, show them that you can execute it from all positions and at all times. And that's more what we're fighting for, is that kind of consistency in the execution of our game plan and their skill sets. But man, I really enjoyed this group, man. They're a good group. Generally they're excited to be in there and get better, and they understand, like, hey, there's some fun stuff ahead for them. So I like the group a lot. I've been really impressed. Just a guy like Parker Filius is a guy who I think, really elevated himself. His hand fighting and some of his position stuff has really improved. So even though he's a highly ranked guy, and been here longer, I think he really found ways to make advances this year in his wrestling. And so, that's a guy that I'm really excited about. And of course, we've got, 4 guys highly ranked inside the top 10 or 12. So I could keep talking, but that's just one guy who really stands out. And I know he's doing all the right things. He's back for a 6th year. He's working on a master's. He knows what's coming. And, he's finding other ways to be better, always, from his diet to his nutrition to, skill sets. So he's been a really good leader for us, I think, and a great example for the young guys.
With us being so young, how have people like Parker and Thomas Pinola, Kendall Coleman, some of these upperclassmen, how have they adjusted into their role as leaders and, the elder statesmen of the crew with such a young group?
Yeah. And that can be a bit of a challenge, right? Like, I was talking with Tom Pinola last night. We were the last 2 out of the wrestling offices last night. We were just sitting around talking about the year and different things and this, that, and the other. And he commented how he really was enjoying his roommates. And he's got some young guys. Now he's got an older guy like Kendall Coleman in there, but Jake Knoll, who's coming in this year, and Hayden Kopis. And he just was talking about the dynamic that he has with those guys and how he is really enjoying his time with them. And that's key. You just can't assume, that everybody's their buddy and friends, right? Like, you're always working hard on your culture. You're working on creating those connections and going into this thing together, right? I mean, you need it, even though it's an individual sport, man, that we're together on this deal is a big part of it. And I really feel strongly that Tom and Parker and even Matt Ramos and Kendall, they're all finding ways to connect with their younger teammates, and that shouldn't be ignored. There is talent there, but you can't just assume it's always just talent, right? We've seen a lot of talented kids be undisciplined or kind of go the wrong direction on things. So to have them connected with not only your best kids, but kids who do things the right way is a huge deal. And that's something that we won't ever ignore or take for granted. And so I have been happy. Again, that goes to part of this team dynamic and why I'm enjoying working with them.
I'm big on the that's been a thing for me lately, is the not taking things for granted, not taking the little things like that. And I think a lot of guys are doing a good job of that, and I'm really hoping it pays dividends.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, and just think how far some of these kids have come in a year. Here's a guy, that's going to be in the mix at heavyweight, right? I mean, we're going to talk Wrestle-Offs here in a second, I know, so I'll jump the gun a bit. But like Tristan Ruhlman, I'll give him a little feather in his cap right now. Like, last year he really struggled with his, transition to college and just lots of different ways. And he's got talent and he's a good kid. We have high expectations for him, but he struggled with that transition. And this year he's almost flipped that coin completely in terms of kind of how he's handling day to day in his life and academics and wrestling. Like, there's a guy that, we've seen a really strong transformation from. And I know, Tanner, you've had a part of that, and kind of mentoring with him as well. And so again, these are the things that you just don't take for granted. They're big in turning these kids into the right, kind of mindset, and that's the right habits, and then chasing the right goals. And that's probably a whole nother podcast maybe, right, guys? But
sure.
But that's a big deal. like I said, you don't ever sleep on those things, because you can have a lot of talent and still not get anything done. And that's not what I've seen from this group. There's a genuine excitement about what they can be, but there's not, hey, we're going to take this for granted. I think even Coach Gardner, new to our staff, had guys talking about things before practice. Everybody had to name off one thing they were thankful for, what they feel blessed about or what they were thankful for. And there was definite, themes that come out of that. And so you get a really good sense of where the guys are at when they have to stand and talk about, what are you thankful for today, right now? Stand up, talk, impromptu. And so those are things that, again, I don't take for granted with this team, and I think eventually you're going to see the character and the work ethic of this team take these guys to great places.
You opened the can, so we might as well get into it. First opportunity to make weight and wrestle Friday, 6 p.m. Holloway Gymnasium will be streamed live on Big Ten Plus, the 2022 Purdue Wrestle-Offs. We will have approximately, at this time, we will have 19 matches.
Yep.
Some will be a little bit more of guys trying to compete for spots. Some will be more guys getting out and making weight and competing for the first time. But all in all, it should be a nice evening of wrestling.
Yeah. And I'll just kind of say this to the people listening. And this is what I told the team. It's more about competing, than it is just trying to win a match, say 1-0. I mean, if you want to represent this team, you've got to be a competitor. You got to compete hard for us, and we got to be able to trust when we send you out there that you're going to go out there and compete at a high level to the best of what you're capable of. And so for me, I want to see guys competing. We will have a couple opportunities to determine what our lineup's going to be. We've got this, so this is kind of an indicator, right? I call these more indicator matches than wrestle-offs, and then we're going to take a full bus load of guys to our first open tournament, and that will be another big indicator for us as we go into our first duel on November 13th. So a couple opportunities for guys to showcase what they can do, and I just want to see who's going to go out, get after it, and really compete. And the word that we've used, and I know I've got this, actually Coach Gable and I talked about this, maybe it was last year after the Iowa duel, is wrestling with authority. You want to see guys who wrestle with authority, not somebody who's just trying to get by and just skate by and get the win. Let's wrestle with authority and show us what you got. And that's what I'm really looking for from this young group. Take what you're capable of and throw it out in front of the crowd and wrestle with authority. And that's really what I'm looking for. And because of that, you're going to see a number, as you mentioned, Tanner, of different scenarios. You're going to have some true, really competitive 2 out of 3 matches to see, who are the guys for those weights. And then you're going to see some other things that are more exhibition matches. I might have a 25 and a 33 that we paired up just to see how they look, how they compete and how they perform, and give guys that opportunity again to compete. So, it's a bit of everything, I guess. But again, we want guys out there competing hard and getting after each other, so we kind of know where we stand after the first several weeks of practice.
Cory, I know we have talked about this over the years at length, but the whole idea and the concept of wrestle-offs is such a unique circumstance in sport, and it's one that I've always found very interesting about wrestling, where you're looking at 2 guys and they're gonna, theoretically, like Tony just said, this isn't necessarily for all the marbles, but it's like you got 2 guys competing for the same weight, and it's not necessarily coach's interpretation of how they practice. It's not, who played better in the game last time, where they can both go out and get minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's to translate it to basketball, for me, it's 2 guys playing one-on-one against each other for the job.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always found that fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the it's the most unique, one of the most unique things about the sport, and also one of the biggest travesties of the sport is that you've got 10 spots, and it doesn't matter if, if you've got 17 or 20 high quality guys, you've got 10 spots. If you go 17 deep in basketball, you're crazy, but also they can all get 8 or 10 minutes.
Unless you're at Grinnell.
Unless you're Grinnell. Right. Good point. They can all get their time. You can't do that in wrestling. It's you're the guy or you're not. And that's the way it is. And it's awesome, and it sucks. And you're right. The whole Wrestle-Off, the whole challenge, aspect of it. And okay, you want to be the man, go prove you're the man, is really cool. It's a really neat, sort of higher stakes. This isn't an exhibition. This isn't a practice. It is, but it really matters.
There's no doubt, and it's a piece of deciding who is the guy. And the reason that I just qualify it, right, is I tell people, and quite often it is, right. Sometimes there's guys that are clearly the guy, but sometimes you've got, they're partners. They wrestle each other a lot, and you understand how to compete against that guy. And so that's why we still reserve the opportunity or the decision for it when you go out and compete against different competition, in an environment you can't control, a different official in a different venue, who will still be, their normal selves, step out there and let the fur fly and get after it. And that's not everybody. That's not it. You want it to be everybody. We coach every guy in our team that when you put your foot on the line, hey man, do you, for lack of a better word, like get out there and be you and get after them. But that's not always the case for some young people as they're working through different stages of their career.
Staying kind of on theme here, Tony, does wrestling, do people in wrestling understand and not, do they take for granted the uniqueness of the Wrestle-Off and that concept? Or is it something that's just part of the sport you don't really think of? Or is it, or do you guys understand and realize how unique and cool that is about the sport?
Oh, it's probably something we take for granted. At least I do. You know what I mean? It's, it's not something that I've walked around. Like, you guys have a real appreciation for what that means as an athlete. Like, you play a team sport. It's a subjective deal where coach is going to make up his mind who the starter is. And here you have a huge say in it, from defeating the guy across from you, or even just taking that out and how you perform, elsewhere. So I'm sure I take it for granted. You know what I mean? You may want to take a poll on that, but it's not something that I think about a lot. So yeah, that's it for me. I don't think about it much, but I also feel like this. There's a different situation for every kid, right? As we were going through pairings and matchups, and I know what I want to see and why I want to see it, and it's not the same for every kid. Not everybody's wrestling 2 out of 3. Not everybody's going to wrestle, the same guy twice. There's different goals and objectives here from my standpoint. I know I want everybody to tune in and enjoy good wrestling. I want them to see 2 guys, no matter who they are, battling it out hard, trying to score points. And that's going to develop them, and it's going to pull fans in. So I know I want people to see that, but I got my reasons, and they vary kid to kid. I mean, one kid may need something else in my mind, another kid needs something different. And so that's where, as a coach, right, you're trying to create situations so you get a real feel for where you're at. Maybe that's not the answer you're looking for, but that's where my head is.
I mean, I was in that same meeting, Tony, so I know what you're saying and where you're coming from.
Where it's coming from. Yeah.
And what you're, the specifics behind kind of the concepts you were just pointing out. But no, it's the truth. And it's one thing that I've always kind of enjoyed about listening to you coach and listening to you talk to the guys about how, like, I'm not going to treat you all the same, but I will treat you fair.
That's the goal.
You know what I mean? Like, the whole idea that you can treat everybody the same, it's great in theory, but it's just not realistic, and it's not. And it shouldn't be the way you do things, because like you said, everybody needs something different. Everybody's preparing for this season a little bit differently. And, you got a kid like Parker Phileas, who's in year 6, and you got a kid like Dustin Norris, who's in year 2. And you got, and then you got our true freshmen who are all just trying to figure this out for the first time. And so yeah, I think that it shows a nice consistency to what you preach both inside and outside of the room, and how it translates into something like Wrestle-Offs.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Cory, anybody special you're looking forward to seeing suit up? I mean, the reality is you're going to watch most of these guys wrestle for the first time, Cory.
That's the thing. It's a lot of names that I've heard, since we did, signing days interviews with Stony Buell and Ben Venadia and, fellas like that I've never actually seen, in person, let the fur fly. So that'll be fun. I like the Ruhlman Copus match. I think,
Yep.
I'd love to see, like you said, how much Tristan's grown and sort of grown into the college thing. And I've been looking forward to seeing Hayden Copus since he got on campus. Haven't been able to do that. So that'll be a fun one. I see they're going twice. I'm looking at the lineup here, and there's some good matchups that should be very entertaining.
There's no doubt. 3 weights that I'll just kind of highlight, and there's a lot here because there's a lot of young faces that you'll see. But you already touched heavyweight, Copus and Ruhlman. They were looking forward to seeing that. The 2 quality kids that we think are both making gains. At 165, Stony Buell, Cooper Norrie. Both those guys have shown really, great flashes in the room so far this year. I expect that to be really competitive. 49 will also be a 2 out of 3 kind of a situation. All of these, right, are 2 out of 3s here. Trey Cruzy and Jaden Reynolds, should be competitive at 49 as well. After that, it's just looking at a lot of young kids and seeing where we're at. I mean, first look at Norris, first look at Ben Venadia, and obviously there's a couple other guys that I just talked about in Copus, Ruhlman, who are young guys, so just there's some good young kids in there no matter what. I'm sure people are going to enjoy, though. Matt Ramos is going to have a match in there. Kendall Coleman's going to have a match in there. I mean, those are guys that are, strong contributors in the lineup last year who people will enjoy seeing compete against some different faces.
Yeah, I mean, Coach, you hit it right on the head. I mean, like I said, we've got 19 projected matches. We're going to have a couple guys who won't compete, and that's
Yep.
that. I think we started out at like 22, and so we've had a few matches come off the list over the last couple of days as we get ready. And that's pretty standard. That we anticipated that, but definitely looking forward to getting to see the guys.
Yep.
Get out there, turn the lights on, and get at it.
No doubt. It's going to be fun. Like I said, I've enjoyed working with this team. And now for me, it's just, hey, we're going to throw a Big Ten official in there, Jamie George, who will see us in the Big Ten, is going to come down from Chicago to do the matches. So it's going to be fun just to sit back and watch these guys just turn it loose and kind of see where we're at and where we may want to, fix, shore some things up.
Question, since you brought it up on the official, I love that you're bringing in a Big Ten official, and Jamie's coming down. Are there any points of emphasis this year? Any slight tweaks to the way they're calling matches that are really going to be an emphasis? I know sometimes that plays into it for Wrestle-Offs.
Well, I mean, there's a few new rules in there, that people can look at. As far as sudden death is longer than it used to be. And the first 30-second riding time counts. It used to be you went twice through, yep, and riding time didn't count until the second time through, whereas now it's going to count right away. So there's a few tweaks that way, but I am interested to hear Jamie just talk about points of emphasis from his point of view. They're obviously talking to head officials, nationally and within our conference. So I am interested to hear his kind of pre-match speech. He'll do it just like a regular duel. He'll come down after weigh-ins and address the guys. And so again, I'm interested to hear what maybe his points of emphasis are from what he's been told.
Yeah. Referees, they get more than their share of crap, and I'm as guilty as anybody. But the ones we see in the Big Ten are as good as any in the country, and they're consistent. usually, and
Yeah,
they're
usually.
very good. They're doing their darndest out there to make sure that everything's fair and on the up and up. And I love that he's going to address the team and make it as normal as possible.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be good. It's as close, right, to a real thing, right? As you can get. Rolling out another official. We're going at 1 hour weigh-in, just so everybody knows. So it'll kind of mimic a duel.
Good.
And away we go.
Getting closer to the real thing. That's this will be the first step. Open the following weekend at the Clarion Open, and obviously we'll get back together next week and look closer at that lineup and what we're planning on doing there. But one last thing I wanted to touch on, our friends over at Matt Scouts came out with an updated 2023 recruiting big board today. And while we can't get into specifics, there were definitely some exciting news for the Boilermakers on the heels of a very impressive Super 32 and some very outstanding representatives that will soon become family members in the old gold and black.
Yeah, the best thing you just mentioned is we'll be able to talk about these guys personally here soon, in a few weeks down the road. So I'm looking forward to that. But for now, people, if you're curious, we'll have to go look. And we got a couple guys inside the top 33, and they'll show them as Purdue commits, and they're going to be signing with us shortly. And then we've got another young man who's in the top 200 that we think a lot of as well. So right now we got 3 guys in there who we all think are going to really help this team in the future. And we've talked a lot about recruiting our tails off this fall. So we would expect to add another 1 or 2 more at least here in the near future as well. So nice to see those guys getting the recognition for the hard work reflected in the national rankings. And again, hopeful that we'll have more to add soon and we can really talk about them in depth once signing day comes.
Speaking a little bit specifically about Super 32, Flow Wrestling did an article where they scored it out on a team score for via signees, and they had the Boilermakers sitting up at second place overall, which was obviously very exciting. We had a Super 32 champ. We had another guy take third place. Another guy was 1 round off of placing. Yep. And so you want to keep things keep them in perspective. It's one tournament, it's one thing, but it's really hard to not be excited about some of their performances, Tony.
Yeah, and you're always looking fit, right? We just spent a lot of time talking about culture, right, and what that means and how it affects your team, and don't take it for granted. And these guys specifically today we're kind of alluding to, generally speaking, fit what we're looking for, man. Matt Ratz, love the sport, love the guys on our team and the culture that we have. And so I feel really good about these 3 kids. Not only are they talented, and that's reflected in their performances, but man, they fit who we are and what we're about and what we're trying to do. And I just feel strongly we're going to add another 1 or 2 more probably soon.
Really excited to be able to talk about them by name officially in a couple weeks here. Possibly have them as guests on the show. It's an exciting time of year. Season's starting. Guys are putting pen to paper. It's away we go, right?
Yeah, it's just like competing, right? Signing day is just like competing. You want to see the fruits of your labor, right? We've been working our tail off, and we're going to compete soon, and we're going to see the fruits of our labor. We'll see what that hard work means for each kid. And it's the same thing in terms of signing is, you recruited these kids for a reason, and you stuck by them, and they stuck by you. And now, hey, that's the kind of the fruits of your labor, so to speak. So looking forward to, a lot of what the next few weeks is going to bring, both from a competition standpoint as well as a team addition standpoint.
I got a signing day question, Coach. In terms of where it falls on the calendar, kind of stinks that it's right in the middle of the excitement of the start of a season too.
Yep.
would it be better, do you think, to have it maybe earlier in the calendar year or after the season's over?
Yeah, I think going earlier would probably be the best option. If you're going to move it, this is something that we've been used to forever. So
Yeah,
again,
sure.
right. Like, you asked me and I haven't thought about it as much and maybe I should. But if you ask me, hey, should we move it? Cause you're right. We're right in the middle. Like, man, you are recruiting your tail off right up to the season starting and you need to be thinking about your team as well. So maybe we should move it up a little bit. There's a lot of these kids now can commit as juniors. We've already got a junior commit. And again, I think we're going to have one or two more soon. So maybe we should move it up, and ease that kind of, tension or, splitting the tension maybe between the season, your guys and who you're trying to bring in. That's probably not a bad idea. I don't think later, again, just because these kids are taking visits so early. Now you don't want to wait. You want to get them in and get them on board if you can.
That's true. They've got seasons that they're in the middle of too. So they're starting to gear up for high school right now. And
no doubt.
And that's a lot of what I've heard from families and from prospective student athletes as we've had them on campus is the idea of having that decision made and put to bed and solidified so that they can go enjoy what's left of their high school experience and get ready for college and so on and so forth. I've heard a number of times from people about like, I want to decide because I want to be ready. I want to be done. I want to move forward. And so it's moving it back. I can't imagine what a circus that would turn into.
No, if anything, what's been kind of on the table is starting visits sooner. You can start talking to them earlier than ever before, as juniors, but just opening it up and saying, hey, if you can talk to them, let's bring them in on visits and try to get it all done. So if you wanted to move that signing date up to say October, so it's over before you even, compete, that would be a fair proposal in my mind. And they do leave the window open, right? Like once it opens, it doesn't close.
Right.
It used to be you had a week to sign everybody. But now the last few years, it just stays open. So if you want to open it a little earlier, I think that could be a fair proposal for people.
Yeah. Cory, I know you said you were gonna come at us. So
yeah. So before we get together again, it'll be a Halloween. Halloween coming up Monday night. You were talking, guys, a little bit before we started recording on some movies that you've been watching. So I'm going to meld those two. Favorite scary movie and why?
I'm not a huge. I'm going to be honest. I've never been a huge fan of the genre. I guess recently, so I think maybe a lot of my favorite stuff would be older, probably.
Okay.
So, I mean, this ain't a scary movie, but I just watched it and I'm infatuated with it. I just watched on Netflix Dahmer, and that's pretty messed up. That's pretty scary. Does that count? I mean, I know it's not a horror flick, but that was pretty scary. And it was real life. That had my mind.
I'll accept it.
That had my mind going in circles.
It's fun. It's wild watching some of that stuff that we lived through and realizing just how much you never knew.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
And I will say, like showing the different side, like clearly there was Dahmer who knew there was something wrong with him. Like when he confessed to everything, I know this ain't right. This ain't normal. But then like the witness stuff was crazy. Like why he kind of slipped through the cracks for all those years. And it fascinated me on a pretty high level for me. I love those kind of things,
Okay.
It just the human mind and the way they work is fascinating.
I'll go with something more recent that I've seen. I don't know if this is my favorite, but I think it's probably my favorite thing I've seen recently was Dr. Sleep.
Very good.
It was the sequel. It's King's sequel to The Shining.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I like The Shining as well. The books.
And The Shining was a good one. I would have gone. That's pretty old. I enjoyed that though.
Jack is the man.
Yep.
And And they actually, in Dr. Sleep, they did a heck of a tribute to him. They had a appearance by a guy who was a dead ringer for a young Jack Nicholson. That stepped in and did a small scene. So it was very, very enjoyable. But read the book, The Shining, which is in most cases infinitely better than the movie.
Right. Yeah.
But
I love that King actually hates the Kubrick version of The Shining.
Yep. Took his name off it.
Took his name off it.
Took his name off it.
I didn't even know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
They took Kubrick took some very liberal stances on the storyline and some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. All right, good stuff. Thanks, Dahmer and Dr. Sleep. There you have it. All right. Wrestle-Offs Friday at 6:00 on Big Ten Plus. If you can't make it out to Holloway, admission free if you can make it out to Holloway. So please come on out. There's, I know there's plenty going on in the world, but there's not a lot going on campus this weekend. You guys Friday night and then volleyball on Sunday, and that's pretty much it. So get out and support your Boilermakers if you have a chance, and we'll be back here next week to talk about the results and to preview the Clarion Open. Tony, Tanner, thanks as always. Boiler up.